Shanti. What is it that we would like to see in this world of ours? We've come to a point where there's a huge variety in every aspect. The whole world could be described as a tree with many, many branches. And if you're thinking about the situation of religion, then it's like the whole tree has many, many different branches, all going off in many different directions. But even the branches are then subdivided into many, many twigs. And so it's many different religions, every religion divided within itself into many different segments, and yet, of course, what we would like to see is harmony. We see a world of many different cultures, many different nationalities, many languages. The things that come in terms of many, many, many is manifold. There's so many varieties of absolutely everything now. And yet, within this context, what we would really like to see is everything come together in a state of not just oneness. Oneness perhaps means that there's a loss of identity. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a state of harmony in which there's mutual respect, in which we're able to work together, live together, cooperate together. It seems to be a dream very far away. And yet, of course, the whole tree exists only because at the base of the tree there are roots. And all the different branches might be going off in many different directions, yet the roots are together, and even the roots have come from the same seed. It's a good inspiration for us, because it means that although we do see this huge amount of variety, yet we know that it is possible still to live together in harmony. In fact, if it wasn't a question of variety, then the question of harmony wouldn't arise. For example, when a painter brings in many different colors and he balances the colors in such a beautiful way that it all harmonizes, then we say that this is a work of art. When an orchestra comes together, it's not one instrument, it's many different instruments. But the many instruments come together and they harmonize together. And then we say that there's beautiful music that's been generated. And so it is at a time when there is such a huge amount of diversity that the very subject of harmony is of interest. If there wasn't such a huge variety, then harmony wouldn't be a factor to consider. How can we come to that state? In terms of spirituality, there's a very simple method that we can apply in all situations. Just as within science, there's a few basic laws that need to be understood very clearly, and those basic principles can then be applied in many different situations, and then things may become extremely complex, but the basic principle still holds good. The same is true of spirituality. There are a few basic fundamental truths that we need to accept and understand. And once we've been able to do that, we can build up the whole picture of what we need to put right. If seeing the conditions of disunity and chaos in the world, I simply become confused or disturbed by it, I'm not able to give a positive contribution to be able to put the situation right again. And so what I have to do is to be able to see what it is I can do to help things, but also it's been our experience over, if not a few thousand years, at least a few hundred years, that trying to tackle the outside, the exterior things, seems to just make things even worse and complicate the situation even further. And so spirituality teaches me that if I want to do something that's constructive and positive, what I have to do is to begin inside. When I begin inside, then I can have a positive influence on things that are happening outside around me also. In terms of harmony, a question that I have to ask myself is there harmony within my own inner being? And in particular, there are two aspects of the self that sometimes seem to be at odds with each other, or perhaps even engaged in a tug of war with each other. One could describe them very simply as being the dimension of the heart and the dimension of the head. In other words, we could also say it's a question of, on one side, the feelings and the emotions that I have, and on the other side, the reason and the logic that I have. Or even in other words, one could describe it as the difference between the way my mind perceives something and the way in which my conscience is working and moving. It's different terms applied to the essential factor in which we're looking at two aspects of the inner being. One aspect is the very superficial aspect that we're able to see very, very quickly, and that's described as the mind, and that's also the aspect that generates thoughts. It's also the aspect that experiences emotions and feelings. It's also sometimes described as the heart aspect of the individual. But then there's the other side, which is actually equally important. One can't dismiss the head and say, well, that's not important. I don't want to deal with the things of logic. But it's also related very much to the subject of my own conscience and my own discernment power of that which is right and wrong. And so sometimes my emotions will go in one way, and my conscience will actually guide me and tell me to move in another direction. And at that point of the tug of war of these two forces, then there's a situation in which I end up in a state of disharmony rather than my energies being unified and coming together in a state of harmony. If I, as an individual, am experiencing these states of conflict within myself, then in what way am I going to be able to have a positive contribution to my family, to my colleagues, to my work, to my situation in society? What I have to learn to do is to understand these forces and come to a state where they align together so that my own inner energies are not in conflict and division, but my own energies move together and carry me to the destination that I would like to go to. Imagine being in a carriage in which one horse is going in one direction and the other horse is going in the other direction. There would be a little bit of a problem there, and certainly you wouldn't get anywhere at all near your destination. And this is why sometimes in human life we find that we're putting a lot of energy into something, but we're not actually getting any results. And that's because our own inner energies haven't been aligned together. In recent times, this has also been described in another way. What's been found is that the two hemispheres of the brain deal with different aspects of life and awareness. There's the left-hand side of the brain, and that usually is that aspect which deals with logic, analysis, reason, and so on. And then there's the right side of the brain, which deals with things of creativity, of art, of intuition, of the spiritual experiences that we have. And every human being needs to come to a point where we've been able to align both these forces together. If one half of my brain is alive and the other half of my brain is dormant, I'm not going to be a whole person. Or if I deny one side of my brain at the expense of the other side of the brain, again, my life isn't going to be one of balance. And so what I have to do is to align both energies together. A very simple technique is to be able to come back to the center of my own being, to come back to the awareness of the spiritual identity of the soul, located here in the center of the forehead, just that point of light, that infinitesimal spark of energy which is the source of all life, of consciousness, of awareness. And if I can remain centered, then both hemispheres of my brain start working together. In another way, we can also see how in that state which is described as the awareness of the eternal self, I can actually see what's happening with my mind on one side and with my conscience on the other side. What I need to do in terms of my conscience is to be able to cleanse it so that at least I can discern what is right, what is wrong, what is black, what is white. So often in today's world, everything seems to have become clouded and is just a dull shade of grey instead of being able to see sharply what is right, what is wrong. And this is because we sometimes even deny the validity of right and wrong. This has happened because over a period of time, we've actually ignored the voice of our conscience. For example, if my mind keeps telling me something and my conscience keeps telling me something else, depending on the influences that surround me, the friends that I keep, the company that I have, if those influences are moving in contradiction to my conscience, even though my conscience is first speaking, in the first instance I'll say, no, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this. But the influence is powerful, it's strong, and it keeps coming. And then there comes a point where I say, well, maybe, so what if I do this? It won't really matter. And so I allow my mind to move off and to put through that thought into action, even though I know that it's contrary to what my conscience says. And if I do this, then the sound of the conscience keeps becoming softer, quieter, and it doesn't speak to me anymore. If you've got a friend and you've ignored their advice once, twice, 3 times, you're lucky if they stay your friend after that. Probably, if they do remain your friend, then they'll say, okay, but I'm not going to say anything more to this person. They don't listen to me anyway. And so my conscience stops speaking to me, and everything just becomes very blurred. Or it even comes to the point where I deny that there is something which is right and something which is wrong. We get to a state of not just from morality coming to immorality. From the state in which there are morals, we then come to the state in which we don't follow those morals any longer, and we disobey the sound of our conscience. Now that's described as immorality. But then below that comes the state in which we have the world as we see it today, in which very often we feel that it's an amoral society, a world without morals, in which our conscience is no longer even actually speaking to us. It's in this situation that meditation becomes a very important ingredient, because in the experience of the link of the self with the Supreme, the influence of God strengthens my conscience and clears my conscience, so that I'm actually now able to see clearly, understand clearly, discern clearly. But not only that, because I've been able to draw power from God within myself, my conscience is now strong enough to be able to guide me in the direction that I should be going, without allowing the influences of friends, of company, of society, and all these other factors to misguide me. So on the one side, I'm dealing with the workings of the conscience and putting that right, but on the other side, there's also a little bit of attention I need to give to the quality of my thinking, to the quality of my feelings and my emotions. A simple process is to be able to actually pause for a moment and see, what are my feelings? Are my feelings good feelings? And if I can constantly maintain that awareness of keeping good feelings within myself, both for myself, for others, for situations, then having good feelings means that I'm beginning to bring my mind back into a state of alignment with my conscience once again. When I come to that state of inner balance, of harmony within myself, so that my energies are now focused in one direction, then I find that it's a lot easier coming to a state of harmony with others also. Whilst there's conflict inside, it seems obvious that the result of this is going to be conflict in my relationships outside also, and lack of harmony therein. Where I haven't been able to come to balance within myself, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to satisfy me and do that which is right in my perception. And so harmony within, and there's a greater possibility that there'll be harmony with you and with others around me. One of the things that one has to let go in order to work towards harmony is the sense of ego. The question of self-awareness and the identity of the eternal self is another factor. But the question of ego, where it's the little I that becomes dominant, it's this one factor that causes a disturbance within what could be a situation of harmony. If I remember that I am a child of God, in that awareness there's the self-respect of who I am, but there's also a sense of humility. There's also respect for others around me, and an ability then to come together in harmony with others. Ego will push me in a very specific direction. Ego will say that I am the one that is right. Everybody else is not right. And as soon as I have this thought that I am the one who is right, of course then I'm negating the value of others and the opinion of others and the things that they are doing. This applies in terms of religion, in terms of nationality, in terms of my role in society, in terms of my family also. Letting go of ego would be impossible were it not for the power of spirituality and the link with the Supreme. In that relationship with the Supreme, not only do I have a different vision of myself, but I then truly am able to see the value of all others. This is why I come back to the analogy of the tree, because within all the different branches of the tree, I look down and I see that they all stem from one seed, and that is the Supreme. Within this analogy, we see God as the seed of humanity, as the creator, and the whole tree representing all the different branches of religions, of languages, of nationalities, and so on. Connection with the seed means that every branch then has life, and I'm able to see the beauty of every branch. I'm able to recognize the need for every branch within the tree. Imagine a tree with some of its branches chopped off. It's not as beautiful as it could be. But every branch connected with a seed, gaining life and strength, has then beauty within it, and I recognize its place within the whole scheme of the cosmos. Getting rid of ego is a factor that's very important in terms of harmony, because then, if I let go, then we can all come together. Let us spend a few moments in meditation together, so that firstly, on an inner level, on a subtle level, we generate harmony. I turn inwards. I come back to the awareness of my own inner energies. I allow my feelings to be filled with peace. I allow my conscience to be linked to God, so that God's light and God's might influences it. I come back to the being that I am, just a point of light, a child of God. I look around me and I see each and every individual as a child of God. Religion, color, caste don't exist in this dimension. All I can see are the eternal souls, children of the Supreme. Each one valuable and beautiful. I'm able to let go of the arrogance of the past, and with humility connect with all my family.
Oh.